Awesome. Thanks, Bobby, for joining. So today I invited Bobby Wilson, who's a writer, staff writer on Reservation Dogs. He co-wrote episode 4 with Tommy Pico, or credited as co-writing, and he also wrote on Rutherford Falls. And you also had one episode to your credit in that season as well, right?
I did.
Yeah. And so I wanted to bring Bobby on just talk about Reservation Dogs because Reservation Dogs hijacked my show. I saw the first 2 episodes and I was just like, fuck, I need to keep talking about this. And so I just was like, let me make the next 8 episodes about Reservation Dogs, 1 per episode, because there was so much representation, so much good shit in it. I was just like, I can't just not talk about this. And so I wanted to have Bobby come on and just talk about the show, talk about all the great work he's doing, talk about exciting for, Rutherford Falls season 2, Reservation Dogs season 2. And Bobby, you want to introduce yourself and then we'll get right into it.
Bobby Wilson, Machia Piado. Hushwa Pajagan Dodem. No, I just know so many Indian languages.
Yeah, you do.
I'm the most Indianist person that you'll ever have on this podcast.
You probably are. West Studio over here speaking a bunch of native languages that aren't yours. I love it.
Hi,
awesome.
That's it. I'm Bobby.
Yeah. So I have a number of questions, but the first one really is like, it's not even a question. It's more just a comment. When I'm watching the 1491, to me, so I was a junior in college when the 1491's Wolfpack audition came out, and seeing you go from that and me having watching that probably 100 times to and all like huddled around a laptop to now like huddling around a TV screen, seeing you all play make believe, do it for I know not for real is not the right word, but like in a medium that like everybody has access to. It's like watching your local band like go big. It's fucking awesome. Can you just describe like what that's like to like look back at YouTube days? Like, do you ever guys just like sit down and like think about like remember fucking Wolfpack on like how did you think like I don't know, did you ever see this being the final outcome when you guys were just touring and doing your thing?
Yes, I always did. I always thought about that.
Nice.
But okay, first of all, I want to step back and say I love the local band that made a big thing because I never thought about it like that because like you just do the work and it's like your life and you just like keep doing it and you keep trying to fucking work at it and a lot of it is hoping that shit works out and a lot of it is shit not working out. So it's like it's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I think what's cool, what's great about that too, is it's just like local band. You tell everybody about it. Some people are like, yeah, it was cool. Some people are like, no, I didn't like that. And now it's just like, now everyone's like, yeah, Reservation Dogs. I'm like, you didn't like them when I liked them. So it's like, but yeah, it's freaking awesome to just see that success that you all have because you deserve it. And I think what people don't know about the 1491s is you all went and did like a roadshow comedy troupe tour, basically, where it was like a mixture of showing YouTube videos, giving commentary, but also like doing stand-up. And when me and my wife went and saw you all in Albuquerque, I want to say it was like 2000, I don't know, 13, 14 sometime.
Yeah, that was a while back.
We didn't know what we were getting into. We just saw 1491s performing. And so we had no idea. We just got tickets and showed up. And so when you all were performing, I'm like, what's going to happen? Are they just going to show us YouTube videos? And seeing you guys do stand-up, it was interesting because hearing interviews with Sterling now, like you guys are all, usually writers are comedians, by trade and do stand-up. And so it's so interesting to see your path is way different. Like you didn't go through the Comedy Store. You didn't go through, like Gotham Comedy Club or, the Cellar. Like you guys took a very, very unconventional route. Like, has that afforded you like advantages, disadvantages? Like,
well, I mean, like it definitely afforded us advantages in that we're all writing television shows now and like being in the shows. So that's pretty fucking sweet. But like, that's cool that you bring that up because I talk about this a lot with folks, especially around comedy. I don't know if you're familiar with Cliff Nesteroff. He's an author and he wrote.
Yep. I have that audio book. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so he wrote Comedians, like it's a long title, but it's like the history of American comedy. And then his next book was specifically about indigenous comedy. And when he originally came at it, he was kind of talking about, and this is from his own perspective, you know, and his world experience, was like how he wanted to focus on stand-up, specifically stand-up. And there are so many indigenous comedians who, like, actually, let me back up and say there are so few indigenous comedians who have had what you're talking about in this like sort of conventional track of being comedians, and that is going to the Comedy Store, Second City, Cellar, all this stuff. Like, there's so many fucking Indians who live in rural communities, who live in cities that nobody really gives a shit about, or like thinks about as being like a place where you can make it as a comedian. And so like when it comes to access, it's like there's not that many Indians that can go through that type of shit, you know, that can go to the Comedy Store. And I think about Charlie Hill, and like he was a writer on the original Roseanne series, and Charlie Hill is known as being like the first fucking Indian who got to go on TV and actually tell their own original jokes. You know, Richard Pryor's show. It's like a fucking legendary set for me, for a lot of indigenous comedians to have seen that sort of work. And so it's something to aspire to. That said, like, holy fuck, like sometimes I'm like, damn man, like that dude should have had his own show.
Right. Absolutely.
You know? He should have had his own show. If he had had the opportunities that we have today, like, the man would have killed it. And I wish he was alive to fucking see Rutherford Falls, to see Reservation Dogs, to see all the stuff that we're all working on that's coming into the pipeline. Like, he should be a part of all of that stuff. And because you know, Hollywood wasn't ready for that shit, he didn't get to see that before he passed away.
It hurts me to think. So like on the Comedy Store's website, you go look to their Hall of Fame. Like Charlie Hill's on that, and you look at everybody else's name. You see that Bill Burr, Robin Williams, Joe Rogan. I'm like, all these guys have so much. Like, their filmography is massive. The tours they've done, the arenas they've done, like they've done basically like the cathedrals of comedy. And you see Charlie Hill, and I bet most people are like, "Who's Charlie Hill?" But you ask any comedian on that list, and they can probably just go off how like that was one of the funniest fucking dudes I've ever seen in my life, you know, or one of the fuckiest natural funny guys. And it's such a shame that so many people did not have an opportunity to like just see his work, because when I still talk, I wrote a 20-page paper just about his set on on the Richard Pryor show, just talking about like the freaking like phenomenon that it was and how it still is today. So talking, you know, stay in the vein of comedy, a huge comedian fan, comedy fan. I love stand-up. I listen to like so many podcasts. It's ridiculous. But hearing the early, like, you know, people that are big now, you know, Bill Burr, Joe Rogan, Bobby Lee, hearing them talk about when they started out and how they were just like, hey, I got booked at the corner of a Red Lobster, you know, open mic in the corner of Red Lobster, or open mic in the hallway of a college. You know, it's like, not even ready for comedy. I feel like while you guys didn't have that same thing, you had the same experience in performing at all of these Native communities, because nobody knew what they were getting. They just knew like 1491s were there, and you performed probably at community centers, like places with no microphone, you know. And
no, big time, man. I mean, like, Indians took care of us, man, for our whole careers. Like, I'll tell you what, this is funny. Like, I was going through all of my old shit, trying to throw stuff away. I mean, look at back there. It looks like a fucking hoarder lives here, you know? Like there's like a basket, there's like a fucking bow with no string on it and shit. Like, you know, I was trying to clean a bunch of my shit out, because I'm also an artist, and so all my shit piles up real easy. But I was going through it, and I found a 1099 from like the year 2011, and it said, you know, I was paid $6,000 this one year by literally the American Indian community in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I was like, God damn, like I genuinely got choked up reading that. And, you know, like, you know, fuck capitalism, all this or whatever. But like, this is the artistic support that I received early on in my endeavors of like trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do, and what the 1491s wanted to do. And like, Indians across this whole nation, all these different Indian nations, they looked at us and they were like, those are like, they saw us as like their brothers, you know, as their cousins, as their uncles. And like, they brought us out, they fucking flew us there. And you know, it's not like we were getting fucking rich off of it. You know, we
Hmm.
were, you know, in some years breaking even and spending all this time away from our families just to in the pursuit of this art of comedy. And and they supported us in that. And like Reservation Dogs would not exist without that specific support that we got from our people, you know. And when I say our people, I mean fucking Indians everywhere.
Right, right.
Yeah,
I love hearing you all talk about your time, as a traveling comedy troupe, basically,
yeah,
because hearing Sterling talk when he I've heard him in so many of his interviews talk about learning how to give white people the permission to laugh. I think had you not gone through that maturation, like this show wouldn't be what it is. Like how to set up a joke properly to make it okay for everyone to laugh. Because you want to make a joke about hunger, about abuse, about alcoholism. Unless you're Indian, like, or unless you're native, it's real difficult to land that joke. But you all have made it work. Can you
yeah.
talk about that process of like, quote unquote, giving white people, really non-native people, the permission to laugh?
You know, the funny thing is, it's like because we spent so much time going on tour and indigenous communities specifically, like it wasn't something that we really needed to talk about. Was like we always were in these comfortable spaces where it was like, we're here are our people. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
might not be any of our tribe, like fucking, but uh, like they're here ready to laugh. They're Indians, they understand the experience. We don't got to explain anything. And like we can also, like, we know enough Indians in those communities even already, because Indian country's
Yeah,
hella
it's
small.
it's massive, but it's tiny.
It's massive, but it's tiny, right? And like and it's not hard to know like what makes that specific community laugh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just spend a day with a motherfucker from that community,
Right.
and you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, like.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that said, like we got this commission at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland, Oregon, a few years back, and it was an amazing time. Like we got to work on this play for like almost 2 years, I want to say, before it was premiered on the stage. And like the theater space is white as fuck. Like it is the whitest
Is this
goddamn.
is this Between Two Knees that you're talking
Yeah,
about?
this is where
Okay.
we wrote Between
Okay.
Two Knees. So as a group, we wrote this play, and because none of us had ever written a play before,
Mm-hmm.
the theater company, and they're really supportive of their artists. They like brought us out. They put us up for like weeks at a time,
Wow.
and they would just like let us go to every damn play. And like this is a massive theater company, so at any in any season, at least before the pandemic, obviously, they would have like 4 or 5 fucking plays, you know, on the stage, like for in a day. And so we got to see all of these different plays going on, and like what were the possibilities, and like in all of the audiences, it was like school groups were the most diverse because it was just like, you know, a bunch of fucking
Yeah,
kids.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the people who was paying for the tickets were predominantly old white folks who were getting wine drunk and
Yeah.
like paying, like the tickets are expensive to go to a play, you know? And so we're like, okay, like Indians who aren't per cap are not going to be flying out here to do this shit.
Yep,
Like,
yep.
and so because of that, we were like, well, there are some very specific jokes in there where we're like, we know you're all like geriatric and white and probably
Mm-hmm.
drunk on wine right now, so please enjoy the show. Want to let you know there are jokes about molestation because we be getting diddled all the time. There's shit's tragic. Tragedy happens, but you guys are already used to that because you've been killing us since you got here. And, you know, like just doing jokes like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
like a lot of the humor is like a clear the air type of humor of
Mm-hmm.
like, I always feel like comedy is kind of like the art of criticism, you know, and you tell these truths in a way that hopefully makes people laugh to examine them. And with Between Two Knees, it's like, it was so fun. And we talked to the theater company about this too, was like, people are going to get mad because it's a comedy. And the things
Mm-hmm.
that we're saying are very true and very real, at least to us, to our experience. And they're the critiques. Like even our land acknowledgement was like, you know, Like we had a bunch of jokes in there about how like and by the way, no Indians own this land. We don't even fucking own this land. Like we don't fucking belong here. It's like all you guys like, so go home and give up your houses, to an Indian that you know. Oh, you don't know any Indians. Et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera, et
Just
cetera.
keep piling on, just keep
Yeah,
layering
just
it
keep
on
piling it on until somebody's like, "Oh my god, like this is funny," or till motherfuckers leave, and
till
that
they
shit
walk
happens
out. Yeah,
all of the time with
I'm
that shit.
sure.
And they would, and the types of folks that go to theater and they walk out are the same types of folks that write an angry letter to the management.
Hmm.
And so it was always like they would go out and complain to the usher, which is like some fucking like I don't know 19-year-old who just
Yeah,
turned tickets and like I'm
poor
sorry,
poor
you just don't
kid, man.
know.
Poor kid
Yeah,
gets this massive,
yeah,
just tirade. Has no power in that situation at all.
totally. But with all of that, it is like a deal of like when people go to see Indians do absolutely anything, doesn't fucking matter what it is. And around comedy, they come with these preconceived notions of
Hmm.
who Indians are. Regardless if you're white, if you're black, if you're Asian, whatever, like you have an idea of what Indians are.
Right.
Because I mean, like, how could you not? You come with the preconceived notions of any community that you're not a part of. And for a lot of that stuff, it's like there's so much like tragedy around Indians, like everything that you hear on TV. The only times that even as a comedy troupe for 10 years, whenever we would make it on a big show, like we went to the Daily Show, the only reason we were on there is because they were talking about mascots and how like
Hmm.
racist it is and how does it affect the Indian people and this and that, and like how many times have I been called by like fucking Al Jazeera America or like fucking CNN or some shit to be like, can you talk about Thanksgiving and what it means to you? It's like,
Yeah.
no, motherfucker, I cannot. I don't want to. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm going
Hmm.
to Navajo Nation to eat Thanksgiving shit with my in-laws and not talk
Right.
about this stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like all the and that's the shit that they come into it with is like, oh, fucked up what happened to you guys. Fucked up what
Yeah.
happened to you guys. And so you meet them in that on that playing field.
What I don't like is when I meet non-native people, specifically white people, and they come and they think like that's like breaking bread for you. I'm just like, once they find out you're native, it's some form of I'm so sorry of what they did to you. And it's
Yeah.
just like that's supposed to be like, oh, are we best friends now? Like, oh, I'm so happy I met you. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why that interaction is more common than it isn't. And I also think that some of the characters that you wrote like in the show and Res Dogs are so real. I always talk about and I always bitch about it on my show and on my Instagram that my only criticism I ever get where it's like either a super long email or a super long YouTube comment or a super long DM criticizing my view of my critique of a show, it's always from non-native people. It's never from native people. Like they always like have this very detailed perspective of like why I'm wrong, why my history is wrong, why I can't generalize, why I have an immature perspective. And I'm just like, I'm a native person talking about my native perspective on native representation. But still, you think so. That's why your Kirk Fox character, the salvage junkyard owner, is so
Oh,
perfect.
I
You know,
love Kenny Boy. Kenny Boy is one of my favorite goddamn characters. His
yeah.
loose ass fucking choker,
Yeah, his loose choker, his walking beauty,
Yeah.
hokahay, like
Yeah. Hey.
just taking random pieces of like native shit he's heard and like takes it as truth, and now tries to be Indianer than you,
Yeah,
and
yeah, totally.
it's
He's great. And it's
you
not
want
so on the nose where it's like, Sierra Teller Ornelas, like she used to talk about this thing when we would write Rutherford Falls is like, you don't want to fucking pull the car over and look your audience in the eye and be like, okay, this is why this character acts like this.
mhm.
And this is what he's commenting on. It's like, don't fucking do that. Like, just let the art speak for itself. Can't stand that shit
Yeah.
personally. Like, that's
Well,
my,
and so much of native representation has been that of just
yeah,
like they couldn't just do exactly what you said, just drive by and be like, oh, that was a native person, maybe. Instead, they're like, let's put some pendulum on him. Let's put two braids on, make sure the audience knows he's native. Let's put a hat on and make sure it's beaded. It's like even if he
right.
has one line, people need to know that he's native. And
totally. It's like, that's the other thing, right? It's like about the whole production. You know, when I did What We Do in the Shadows, I play a werewolf in it, and I'm in there for an Indian joke. That's it. You know, that's not a criticism of the show. I fucking love that show. I'm only in one episode in season 1, but goddamn, I am such a fan of that shit. But you know, when I got there, and this is when Jermaine Clement was still the showrunner. They had this episode. He had written this joke about like Twilight, and he was like, well, you know, like let's get a native comedian in there. And so I went out and I met the costume designer, and she was wonderful. She's a New Zealander as well. She did the costume designs for the film What We Do in the Shadows.
No shit.
And she was like, she's like, okay, I got to tell you something. She's like, I talked to Jermaine, who's also an Indigenous person. And she's like, you know, I presented him with like some ideas for your costuming. And I just want to say, like, before you hear it from him, like, I had some very ignorant ideas about how to dress you. And I wanted to show them to you so that you know that I did wrong. And I want you to decide like what you're gonna wear for this thing.
Right.
And so she showed me like these bolo ties that she had picked out before, and like some fucking like this fringy leather thing, and it was really funny stuff. And she was like, "Yeah, you know, like." She said, Jermaine already made fun of me relentlessly for picking these costumes out. And I was like, oh no, that's really funny. And like the costume that I picked out, I thought was really funny because it's like 2 eagles on my titties.
Oh, know? That's awesome.
Yeah. I was like, maybe other people won't think the costume design was funny, but
just, you know, super over the top. Yeah.
For me, I thought it was hilarious. And so we had a good laugh about it, but that really is like the reality of all of this shit. Like I was in the art department on a show that never was. It was supposed to be on CW or something like that.
Okay.
Anyway, it was called Scalped, based on the graphic novel series. And being in the art department, I was also next to the costume department. And those motherfuckers had no idea. I mean, it was like the whitest goddamn production for Indians ever. And I was lucky enough that like Sterling was like a piece of that production.
Okay.
He was like, you got to get my buddy in. You got to get my buddy in because I do like graffiti stuff. So I did like all this work, the spray paint work, and
oh no,
like all this graffiti shit for like the gang hideouts and for all this and that. And I was doing like some design stuff for them. And then they found out I did beadwork, so I started doing some beadwork shit for the props department. And the costume designer was like, you know, in my personal opinion, doing such a terrible fucking job.
Yeah,
and she had no idea, like how to dress Indians. And she also said some very like, you know, like to me racist shit in a room full of where I was the only Indian, you know. And I'm the type of person that I am. I was like, what are you talking about right now?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, well, I mean, you know, anyways, that show was like a prime example of like how, I mean, you can't see it, so I guess it's not much of an example, but it was my first experience watching somebody who is like super white from California picking out Indian costumes for like this show that takes place in the year that it was filmed. You know, it wasn't some historic shit. It was like every motherfucker had like a cowboy hat, a bolo tie, a vest. Like, you know, like she had no idea how to dress Indians.
It's so I had a costume designer on the show, Pilar Goyo. She works on like television shows like Roswell. She's native. She's from Wingate. She's from New Mexico. And she talked a little bit about that, of how like it's really, and it's something I never considered until I talked with her. It's like it like every piece of a production needs to take into consideration representation when you're looking at it. It's like the outfit. It's not like they just said, hey, why don't you dress yourself? It's like, no, somebody was hired to put them in all of those clothes. Somebody was hired to, like, you know, even dress them that way in the background for non-speaking roles. It's like you need to think about all of that, because I say it all the time, for non-native people, that might be their only interaction with natives. And so they come to a show like 1491s and they're like, what the hell is this? I've never seen this before. Like, what does this mean? Are they just a bunch of goofy Indians? Or are they really like this? And I think the going back to the giving permission to white people to laugh. I feel like there was more of that in Rutherford Falls, whereas Reservation Dogs, it was just like, we're gonna be ourselves. You either get it or you don't. And I love how so many people just got on board with it.
Totally. Well, I mean, that's also like the showrunner, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like that whoever is making the decisions from the top down, it's like, the showrunner, I don't even know who the fucking showrunner was for this show that I was talking about, Scalped or whatever,
Yeah.
but like nobody was telling the costume designer, like, don't be doing that. Well, that's not really true. Sterling was in those rooms arguing with people all the time, like to no end, and then when he finally gets his own show, like that's why you see
What you see.
what
Yeah.
you see, right? Is like a motherfucker who knows what they're talking about from that community, who's just like, these are the people that we're going to hire. Like, this is the look, like fucking do this. And that's, Reservation Dogs, Rutherford Falls, both like doing that type of work. That's so important. Like in Rutherford Falls, it's like we had like, and we're just the writers, but the showrunner, Sierra Teller Ellis, is like hitting us up, sending us emails being like, you don't have to, but would you mind looking at these designs and telling me if it's stupid? And that's awesome. Important. And that really is like what you're saying, like with a production, there's hundreds of people in a production, in any given production that you see on TV, in the fucking film. Like there's so many hands in there.
I never got a feel for that. I follow so many of you all that were on the show Res Dogs. And so, seeing your Instagram stories and everyone like always gratuitous, they always blur out the actual screen, like so you couldn't see. But there are so many people like on set. And then I loved it. There was nothing but Indians everywhere on every single one of their stories or, pictures. Yeah. It was amazing. And I talked to Riker Six Killer earlier. I did an interview with him. And he was just like, he's done like stunt work and he's done like acting on mostly non-native shows, it sounds like. And he's just like, I've never been on a set where it's like that family feeling, where it's like really a native community, where it feels like everybody's family. You've worked on different kinds of sets. Like, can you talk a little bit about that difference?
Bro, like, I mean, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Like there's fucking like I'll go into like hair and makeup and shit, and it's like some of Sterling's relatives are in there awesome. Like doing hair, and like there's Harjo's like in the production pieces of it that are like, I don't know, man, like the magic that he worked to fucking get all of that stuff to happen is no small feat. I mean, holy shit. Like you can't get a studio to agree to let you film somewhere like Oklahoma.
Yeah.
In a small ass town. Like those fuckers want you in LA. They want you in New Mexico. They want you in New York, But if the show is filmed in any of those places, then it's not the show that you saw. You have to completely rethink whatever it is, at least in my opinion. You have to rethink everything about it.
To get that vision. That's what I appreciate so much about Taika and Sterling. It's like there's so much of this work and labor that they've done to this point, both pre-famous and now as famous people. They're such indigenous people in the way that they're just lifting people up with them. Of just like they don't have this mindset of scarcity. They're just like, hey, if this is our one shot, we're gonna fucking do it right. We're gonna do it big. We're gonna shoot to the moon. And if we miss, fuck it. Like I think I love that with Sterling's approach. Like he's not being careful. He's not trying to be measured about his approach. He's just like, fuck it. We're gonna do it in Oklahoma. I love the story of like Sterling and Taika being like, this is our show. You got 45 minutes to let us know. We're calling another network. And I'm like, that's so boss, like you're acting like you have all the cards, and you do, because these stories have never been told. There's a hunger for these stories, and I can't wait for season 2. It's just so much fun to like even just talk about this show. I do have a question about just being a writer in general. I've never talked to a writer on a show. I've just heard people talk about it like in the writer's room, but I have a pretty good idea of what the writer's room is like just based on my consumption of podcasts. But what is a writer's role on set? I've always wondered that. So after you've written it, what are you doing on set?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have not been an on-set writer. So, I mean, it is a good question, but
Okay.
I don't have that experience personally.
Okay.
I because of the pandemic, it became a really limited thing. So, like with
Mm,
Rutherford Falls, for example, like I would have gone on set during my own episode to see what that
mm.
was like. Luckily, I am also an actor on Rutherford Falls, and so like on
That
those
was that was a,
episodes,
that was a fucking surprise, by the way.
yeah,
When you when you and
it was a
Julia
surprise to me
when
too.
you
I
and
didn't know they
Julia
were going to
Jones
cast
showed
me.
up, I'm like, that's Bobby. What the hell?
Yeah.
That was awesome. First
Yeah.
episode too.
Well,
Anyway, go
yeah,
ahead.
and like so when I'm done with my scenes, like they let me just stay there, and like what you're asking, what's the on-set writers thing like? I wanted to know the same thing, and so like I would just like go change out of my costume real quick, let that department have their shit back, clear out my
Mhm.
trailer, and just like walk around on set, just like seeing how they fucking do it. And it's
That's awesome.
really, really cool. Like for Rutherford Falls, uh, they had like one on-set writer typically.
Hmm.
And for the ones that I got to watch, that I was part of, it was a writer named Eric Legend, who is amazing, and Sierra herself. Uh, and I got to see how they work together with the director, because it's the director, is telling telling the camera folks where to go, or like what to point at, telling the actors like how to move, and really like orchestrating this whole scene. And the writer there is like like watching from a monitor all of the stuff happen, and is in direct conversation with the director, with like
Wow.
whoever the producers are on set. And they're just like, they're not getting into the actors shit necessarily, or like, because that's the director's telling them
Yeah.
how to move, or when to speed up, when to slow down, whatever. But like the on-set writer, especially if that's their episode, is like changing lines, or like coming up with a new joke that makes sense
I see.
on the spot. So like a lot of the stuff for Rutherford Falls was like Sear or Eric coming over to me and being like, that was great, why don't you try can you like do this line, or like
Mm.
say this, or something like that. I'll be like, oh yeah, that's funny, like let's do it, let's go for that. So that's like the cool shit to me. But it sounds like and for Res Dogs, like I was only there for a day, literally one
No
day.
kidding.
Yeah, only
I
one
would
day.
have thought I would have thought you'd been there the whole time.
No, I fucking wish, like that would have been
Oh
awesome.
man.
But that was not in the cards for me. Plus, I was writing on another show, so like
Hmm.
even the day that I was there, I had to like film super like break of dawn, and then get back
Back
to
on a
my
plane, huh?
hotel room to Zoom with my other show
Mm.
that I've been writing on. That room's done now, but yeah, I had another job that I was doing at the time. So
Look at you. I look at
I
you.
know.
You were lamenting before how you're not as busy as other writers on the show. You're super busy, man. This is awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. This is great. Um,
It's fun.
that's freaking awesome. I lost my question I was gonna ask you about. It was God. It's okay. That's okay. So I wanted to talk about Dear Lady and some of the things that you all included. Um, this is so me and my wife we watched episode 5. I knew Dear Lady was coming just the way you were setting it up, and I couldn't wait because I'm like, how are they gonna do this? This is like the first time it's ever been portrayed, like horror, terror, supernatural stuff is ever portrayed like by natives.
Yeah.
And it was fucking terrifying in like the most real way possible because it was so subtle. It wasn't like exactly what you like what Sierra said, where you didn't stop and get out of the vehicle. Dear Lady is you didn't have an old grandma. I remember stories of Dear Lady when I was a young kid, You didn't have any of that. You just, fucking hooves on a lady, and that was it. There was no explanation other than just like referencing Dear Lady. And same with Tall Man. And can you guys talk about like, was there ever a debate of like, how much do we got to explain? Maybe not a debate, but conversation around like, how much should we explain?
There's always, I mean, like all of this shit when it comes to writing is like a debate of like how much do you explain about a thing, because like exposition can get real muddy um, real quick if it's unchecked in a
Mhm.
show, and then it turns into pulling the car over to explain to the audience what the fuck you're seeing, instead of allowing them to enjoy the story for what it is, the characters for who they are, and to like sit in the mystique of it. Like we're not here to spoon feed every single detail of what's happening here. And that said, we hope everybody enjoys it.
Yeah.
Like
Well, it's great because it doesn't, there's like no fat on this show. It's so lean and it gives you so much, and it's like a piece of elk meat, it's just so dense and nutritious. You look at that little piece of meat, there's no way that fills me up. You eat it, you're just like, Jesus, I'm full. Like it's awesome. That's what this show is like. It's so amazing. And I remember my question before I hit record, we were talking about really the writing process, and you kind of were talking a little bit about that. I think the listeners would be really interested and intrigued to hear how, just because you were credited, you and Tommy Pico, for episode 4, you said you had a hand in all the episodes. Can you talk a little bit how that comes together and how and people are really credited? That
Yeah,
whole
no,
process.
totally. I mean, like we all, like, in every show that you write on, like, you have a hand in everything.
Hmm.
Everybody does. In Rutherford Falls, for example, like, I mean, we that was a 20-week room, and our room was like, you kind of get to know each other at first. Like the first couple weeks is like, you're new at school, and you're
Yeah, yeah,
just like
yeah.
trying to get a feel for everybody. Like a good showrunner will give you a great fucking speech about, like, to kind of set the vibe for how you're doing a thing, or how you're all going to be working together for this period of time. And it's just like it's lovely, you break the season, and you're just like coming up with like all of these episodes. I think it was like the guy who wrote, and it's not my favorite show, but like Falcon and Winter Soldier, he was talking about breaking
Mm.
a season. He said, like, you break episodes vertically, and then you do it horizontally, he was saying. And what he meant by that was, like, you've got, say, 8 episodes here, and like, like this and this happens in the episodes, but then like you take your characters and you say, like, Alora Dannon starts here, and Alora Dannon ends here. Like,
Mm.
what are the vibes, and like, what's the ups and downs of her story in that period of time, and you break it into these like acts. So like, if you break it into like this 3-act structure, just to like keep things in like a good.
You said you break it vertically and then horizontally, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you
well,
said?
that's how we were doing it. We were like, what could this episode be? What could this
Mm-hmm.
episode be? What could this episode be? And then Taz Chavez would be like, okay, like, can we pull back and take a look at these 8 episodes,
Mm.
and like see emotionally where our characters are throughout this period of time, and like, where do they go? Like, what's their state of mind by episode 5? Like, are they at a low, like, what's their low points, what's their high points, where do we
Gosh,
want them to end up,
that
from
sounds
how
like
they.
s- that sounds like so much fun.
It is
That
it's
sounds
really
like so much fun. Like I can just see you
it is.
love you fucking love what you do, and
Yeah,
I
no,
that, that
it's so dope. It's so fucking sick, because it's like, and especially like sitting around and just like there's so much that you talk about, and like really, like, on the artistic side of it, I feel like it's just like weeks and weeks and weeks of philosophy
Mhm.
with like your fellow artists, essentially. Like, we all have these art focused minds, where we're like trying to get at what is the meaning of
That's
and this,
awesome.
like trying to put our own truths into every single thing that we're doing here, and like talking, like telling stories. Like, I mean, like, fucking this room that I just got done in for this Marvel show, like, people are fucking crying, talking about our
Hmm.
fucking like lives and our histories, and like these real things that have happened to us, and how do we like take these experiences and put them into the characters that we've
My
created to
God,
make them
nice.
human beings. uh yeah, I love it. It's some of the greatest shit that you can do in your life. I don't know.
That's awesome.
No
The
doubt.
only thing I'm jealous of, maybe not jealous of, I'm sad for you that the pandemic, because I would love to. I bet like this would be notched up to 11 if you all were in person instead of in Zoom rooms.
That would be pretty sweet, man. And like, yeah, that's why I like. It's crazy. Like we with with Reservation Dogs, like we all pretty much knew each other,
Hmm.
or like at the very least knew of each other because we're all Indians. Like,
Right, right,
we all
right.
fucking know what each other are doing at the very least.
Yeah.
I know what every Indian artist sort of is up to,
Yep.
at any given moment.
Yep.
And so it was a thing of like great to finally meet you.
Yeah. That's
You
great.
even though like we had never shaken hands. And with Rutherford Falls, like we had the great privilege of having that in person contact for like a good chunk of our room
Hmm.
of writing. So like, and it totally is. It's like different because they're like you're eating lunch together, you're walking around together, like there's like you're you're making fun of each other physically, like for what
That's
you
awesome.
wore, or like like shit like that. It's like stuff like that that you don't really get on the
Hmm.
Zoom side of it. But then on like the other half, like fucking the pandemic happened while we were writing Rutherford Falls. Literally while we were writing Rutherford Falls, it happened,
No.
and we all got sent home to continue writing from there. And like, and it felt like we bonded so well with each other in that period of time because it felt like we had gone through the pandemic together in this really crazy way and still like got to make a TV show.
Where do you see this is kind of just a real general question, but where do you see once the pandemic once we're in the clear? I don't know, we'll just call it that. Once we're in the clear and people are like, okay, you can meet in person safely. Do you think they'll go 100% back to the way it was, or do you think we'll still be doing hybrid writers rooms and stuff? Like, what do you think that looks like?
It's hard to say. So like, I mean, I think for studios, it is going to be one on the business side of things, like it's going to be a battle with the studios and with the unions and stuff like that, because it's like for writers, like the studio is providing office space, they're providing lunch, they're providing all of these things for their writers to create a thing. But then like on this side of it, it's like they are not providing me with office space. They're not paying for the wear and tear of my equipment on a laptop. I had to get this fucking light here, and I had to get a new printer, and like I had to upgrade my Wi-Fi and shit. Like they aren't
Hmm.
paying for any of those bills that they would normally be paying for. Like even in Rutherford Falls, like we each got our own computer from NBC Universal, like, and our own offices with like couches and desks and shit. Like, and so it's like what that compensation is going to look like is definitely going to be a battle. But in terms of like workflow and stuff like that, I feel like hybrid is the way of the future. It should be the way of the future. I'm happier here. Like I have a fucking 2-year-old.
Yep, yep, me too.
I get to work and make TV shows while also not missing out on her development and her life, and just like it's amazing. It's truly a privilege to be able to do all of this stuff and to not do it for like a pay cut or anything like
Yeah, no, I think I'm a business person, business mindset anyway, business degree, and I think that from a business standpoint, it just makes sense to not incur that overhead, to not rent office space. I think really it's like it really is a top down decision of like the executive has a belief maybe that like, hey, if you're watching them, they're productive. If you're not watching them, they're not going to be productive. If they don't have that perception, I don't see why you would go back in person, and maybe just add that into your contract somehow, like provide you a Grubhub stipend or something, or whatever's
that.
good for
Totally.
you, and then that
Yeah,
could just
right.
make that work.
And every studio is different. Every showrunner is different. Like all the bosses are fucking different in this industry. You are never going to get like the same showrunner
Mhm.
twice. Like they will be completely different types of people. And some of them are like, absolutely not. We cannot do this over Zoom. And that's just going to be a thing. And
Mhm.
the writers are going to have to be selective about that. Like I would not personally take a job right now in a writer's room that I have to be present for. I just wouldn't, for like a
Yeah.
million different reasons.
Yeah. So there's a couple more questions I had, but one is just what is that like now to be like maybe not the hottest game in town or the hottest ticket in town, but Sterling's done the road show on like the massive podcast. He was on Bill Burr's, he was on What the Fuck with Mark Maron, he's been on Bobby Lee's, and all of those comedians that were on this show, the non-natives really, that have such a reach, they just talk about how much they fucking loved it. And it's so interesting to hear non-natives who are who are actors who are in the industry just talk about how different that set was.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me to think that like non-natives will like want to work with Sterling now or want to be on your show. What does that feel like to like know that? Like who the fuck are we gonna get next?
I saw it coming, and this isn't. Let me say this without trying to sound like a douche, but every time I have a meeting with like a major studio or some executives or something like that, and I don't know the meetings that they're having, but typically, like, happened time after time after time, they have been like, this has been so refreshing and so different talking to you.
Awesome.
I'm like, why?
Yeah, why? Oh no. Lost you there.
You hear me? Okay,
I can.
Hey,
I don't know what happened. It's okay.
my shit froze up for a second.
It's
Anyways,
okay.
I mean, like, it is different for folks, and I do understand to a degree, like, why they are saying that. And a lot of it is like there is within the Hollywood space a very specific culture within like their work culture, I should say. And the work culture on a set like Reservation Dogs is so wildly different from what they're used to that I think they just kind of feel like they're actually a part of it rather than just being brought in and being like told what to do. I get that maybe not be like the most specific way to describe
No,
what that is,
that's okay because I hear so many of the non-name people say that why don't more sets do this? And I think I think eventually like someone's going to catch on. Someone's going to realize like, oh, they didn't do my show because our culture's like this and they're doing that show because their culture's like that. We should start doing more of what Sterling's doing. So what I'm saying is like it's interesting to see like a native person like slowly like making their way to change the game of like really treating people like people on set. Because I've heard some stories like from Riker where it's just like, Jesus, they treat you like that on set,
Yeah, totally. And
there's
that is
like
the
this
thing,
like caste system that's so gross that's existing in like on set.
this isn't my story to tell, but there was one that Sterling had told me early on when he filmed the pilot was like there was there was like an extra and he was being treated relatively poorly because that is typically like the work culture in Hollywood is like, you know, people want to, I think, really kiss ass to folks that are like on that co-star, star, producer, writer level. Like they see the levels and they go like, oh yeah, like let's, like let's kiss their ass. But then these are just extras. These are just background or whatever. But it's like with a production that and like the type of person that Sterling is, like he recognizes how important everyone is in this process. Like you don't have a show without any of these people. Without, if you take out any one of these pieces, like you don't have the show.
Right.
And that includes like your extras, your backgrounds, and they need to be treated with respect and you need to be treated like human fucking beings. And he personally firsthand witnessed someone from like the studio sort of enacting that type of culture. And right away he just like had to get up and give a speech and be like, this ain't a Hollywood set. This is Oklahoma. These people live here. You're guests. You are the guests here.
Wow.
We've come out here to do this job, and we're grateful for it, but you need to abide by the rules of this community.
Fuck yeah,
And
man.
the specific extra that had been he felt disrespected, um, he ended up putting like the camera directly in his goddamn face in the pilot. And so like there's that scene when they steal the chip trucks in the opening, there's this older Indian guy just like fucking walking down the street, and he's like,
Yeah. No, I
and the chip
remember
truck
that.
flies around the corner, you know. That was him. He was like, put
No
the camera right
shit.
on that guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's because of that, and it's because of that leadership specifically that says like we are going to treat people with fucking respect and humanity, and this set is a community. Not all of us have to work together to be here. Like that is the difference, you know. We are all no one is more important than the other here, and that's like that's how you do it. That's how you do it, Dave.
Yeah. You add ho to that. That's a fucking perfect speech right there, man. That's beautiful. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
I got one last question, or really a couple more, but this is really in relation to your 2-year-old. Being a father, I'm a father as well. I have a 2-year-old. I'm so jealous of our kids because when we grew up, we had like Predator and Dances with Wolves, Indian in the Cupboard, Pocahontas. And for them, they'd be like, Res Dogs, that old show, you know, like it's wild. It's wild. Like as a dad, do you process like that, like the gravity of all this, and maybe like trying to set up what representation is going to evolve into for your kid?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Like I can't do any of this work without thinking about like what her life is going to be like. Like my story now is actually her story. You
Mm,
know, this is her childhood, and like the things that her dad did when she was a kid, things that her mom did when she was a kid is like the story of how she became a fully formed human being, you know. And that's the shit that she's going to talk about when she's my age, you know. And I always think about that, and with that I'm always like, you know, how can I do better, like what can I do. And it's also why I like I'm one of the I'm in a show that's not out yet called Spirit Rangers.
bro, I got that in my notes. I was just gonna talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I play a character in that alongside
God, I
Adrian
can't wait for that show.
Chalapa and
Hmm.
Deanna Mad. They were both like a comedic. They're part of a comedy troupe that they've
Hmm.
toured a long time, and the three of us play like these tricksters. So it's like a rabbit. Fuck, I can't remember all of them right now.
Yeah.
But, you know,
It's
anyway,
okay. It's okay.
yeah. But I'm in this show because there is literally no goddamn uh, kids show that has Indians in it. And like the one that I was like, okay, like she liked horses for a little bit because we live kind of by some horses. And so like
Mm.
whenever we go to walk in the park and she sees a horse, she's like, oh, like check that shit out, you know, like so excited. And so I was like, okay, she likes horses. Let's watch this horse show. It's called Spirit.
Oh God.
And,
Yep.
like
Yep.
follows, I guess she's like Latina. I don't know. She's like
Did you watch the new one or the old one?
whatever's on Netflix. I don't know.
Okay, so that's the new one. The old one's worse. So go ahead.
Is it worse?
It's
Because
worse.
there is an Indian episode where this kid is Navajo, and it was the worst. I was like, okay, we're not watching this anymore.
Yep.
And then even like Peppa Pig, you know, she got into Peppa Pig because one of her aunties for her birthday gave her like a little Peppa Pig set. And she really liked him. She's carrying these fucking toys everywhere. Like, you know, these are her little pigs. She's like, pig,
Right.
pig.
It's cute.
And so I was like, okay, well, let's watch Peppa Pig for a little bit. And it's cool. It's this little British show about some little pig girl and her little pig family. And, you know, they do little kid stuff. And then there's an episode where like one of them comes out of a teepee, not wearing like, and I think they were like maybe trying to not be offensive because like they were like, okay, like the kid's dressed like a cowboy and is like, let's do Wild West. And there was like no Indians at all, but there was.
Oh God.
So I was like, God damn, like my kid don't have any shit to watch at her little age, you know? And so like the folks who created this show, like Spirit Rangers, I'm pumped about it, man. Like they're doing their fucking best. Like
I can't wait for that show.
They got Indians in the room, they got Indians on the mic, like and aesthetically, like the design for it looks fantastic. I can't fucking wait. I'm so
Same
happy.
here for the same reasons, because you know, my wife watches all those shows, and she's, you know, and by the end of the day, you know, you see the same stuff over and over. You tune in and out as a parent, but then randomly you'll catch like, what the fuck is that? Is that a headdress?
Yeah,
Those feathers?
totally.
Why
Yeah.
why is there a teepee in this? You know, I'm just,
God
and
damn it.
you're just thinking like, oh, it's YouTube. You know, it's like the kids playlist, and then like it's such a disservice. So like for us, that's why we like only watch Sesame Street, because Sesame Street's always been on it. They were like great with diversity and
Yeah.
great with like portraying real people. They've definitely missed on some stuff, but overall, it's better than a lot of shit. And
Yeah.
then same with Molly from Denali. My kid's not like old enough to like that show yet, but
Right.
like,
Same.
but that's one I'm like excited that that exists, and I can't wait for Spirit Rangers for that, for just everything you described.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone loves that show, because
Yeah.
I
Me
want more
too.
stuff like this for my son.
And it's totally a toddler show. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
there's like a huge musical element to it. It's
That's
like
great.
it's like my kid is at the right age for it.
Oh
It's like
man.
3-year-olds and 4-year-olds are gonna fucking love it. And
Oh gosh,
you
I
know,
can't wait.
once she gets into narrative stuff, like Molly from Denali is gonna be my shit. I'm
Yeah,
so
to be on replay.
yeah.
I'm gonna try to get someone from the show on that, just so like someday be like, hey kid, remember when you liked Molly from Denali? Your dad talked
Okay.
to, you know, a producer on that show. Um,
Yeah.
I think it's so encouraging to see, like, just to think about the possibilities of like where we are today with Rutherford Falls Reservation Dogs, where we can go from
Mhm.
here, you know. And it's really just because of my kid. Because when I started the show, I wanted to talk about Native representation, and it was so I started with the stuff I knew, like, you know, Thunderheart and Predator, stuff I grew up on. And looking back
Love
on
that
it now, it
show.
was just, yeah. And looking back on it now, it was like really a lot of my love was like born out of compromise. You know,
Absolutely.
it was like, well, this is close enough, and I love this. You know,
Yeah.
and I love that I don't have to do that with this show. And so I
Totally. Totally.
just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. I'm so proud of all of you all for everything you've done up to this point. And fucking can't wait for season 2 of Res Dogs. Fucking can't wait for season 2 of Rutherford Falls. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, for real.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it,
Fuck
man.
yeah.
Well, I don't have anything further, man. Just thank you so much
Great.
for taking the time.
Yeah. No. Fucking thanks for having me, dude. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
yeah,
And
let me.
you know, can't wait to be embarrassed by the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, same. 41 episodes in. I'm still right there with you, man. So, all right, man. Everyone, talk to you later.